All right, we're gonna get started here. Welcome back, folks. How's your first week of classes been? Yeah, I'm seeing some head nods. Cool. Well, today we are gonna kind of give you guys, I would say, the general history and overview of orientation. Obviously, orientation has changed a lot, not only because of the pandemic, but just over the years, a lot of different things have become available. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna start out today by doing some spotlights and some shout outs. Then we're gonna do an overview of the 2019 orientation schedule. Summer 2019 was the last time we had like the most traditional in-person orientation program, so that's why we're reviewing that one. We're then going to do the highlight schedule. The highlight schedule is essentially every single activity or responsibility that staff and students have throughout the sessions. We're then going to review what we did for this spring, because that was the first time that I was in the role, but also the first time that we hosted an orientation in person for some of our students, and then updates for summer, and then we're going to do a snack pack to end out. So to start, are you recording, by the way? Campus and Community Spotlight. So for those of you that don't know, the DISC is hosting a celebration for MLK Jr.'s birthday. It's not going to be on Martin Luther King Day, but it's actually on the Friday. And so that's going to be on the 15th. This is kind of a general run through of the schedule. I didn't know, Lila, since you work in the DISC, do you want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah.
Are you
tomorrow,
yeah.
I'm in it after that tomorrow,
Cool.
and I'm gonna be there all day. If you have any questions?
Yeah.
Also, if you want the link, I think you can go to the DISC's Instagram.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say too. So it is via WebEx, and so as Lila mentioned, it sounds like you can get it on Instagram, or if you go to the calendar of events at MSU, the information is there too, so you guys can pull that up. But it's all day, so it'd be awesome if you checked it out. The other thing that I'll mention is that we have spring MSU debut. Is anyone familiar with what MSU debut is? Who wants to explain it to others? Trisha.
So basically, MSU debut is the first like month of school where they do like the workshops, right thing. It's like all the events like that first school to kind of bring in that like community feel for like the new students.
Yeah. So for some of our freshmen, you guys maybe didn't have the most traditional MSU debut. Usually they're like the massive big scale events, like when you see that big photo of the M where everyone's in their yellow t-shirts, that's an MSU debut event. So we do host one in the fall, but we also host one in the spring for some of our new students. These are two of our upcoming events, but they have the full schedule online, and it's montana.edu/MSU debut. So they're doing some different virtual events. Singo is a fan favorite. Has anyone not played Singo? Singo is basically like bingo, but what they do is they play a song, and then you're like, oh my god, that's that song from Shrek, like that must be awesome. And then you like cross it off, and then you get points, and you basically, instead of saying bingo, you shout out Singo, and it's truly incredible. So that's super fun if you guys are interested in as well, and that's on Monday. Yeah.
Okay, so I just heard of MSU debut and I was looking at all the events on. I have no clue if anyone knows about this, but I saw the like
Yeah.
and it says like reserve a spot, but I can't find anywhere to reserve a spot. Is that like up yet or?
That's an excellent question. So basically the Office of Student Engagement is the one that hosts MSU debut. They have been working on basically getting approval from both the county as well as campus to have an on-campus ice skating rink. So I think there's a lot that goes into that. But your contact would be through the Office of Student Engagement. So if you reach out to them, you can say like, hey, I'm interested in this, or I want to learn more. And they might have some recommendations. Yeah.
Thank you.
They traditionally pull in like a lot of people from across campus, right? So that's a partnership that they have with Outdoor Rec. And I think they're getting like all the ice skating and stuff through them. So, yeah. Which would be awesome. We had back in 2016, maybe 2017. We had the 125th birthday celebration on campus, and they had an ice skating rink on campus for that too. All right, is there any other campus and community spotlights? Anything that's happening, either in the office that you work in, or anything around Bozeman that anyone else wants to highlight for the group? Yeah.
Kind of on the there's another virtual trivia for friends.
For friends. Yeah, I didn't know if anyone was like super into The Mandalorian. I just started watching it, so I'm on episode like 2. But if you're into Friends, well, yeah. I know it's like a fan favorite, but Friends too. Any other campus and community spotlights? Cool. Any shout outs? Anything that you've maybe seen your peers do? Anything that you want to recognize someone else in the class for doing this week? Yeah, Ella?
Bree for driving me home the other night.
Bree drove her home. That's so nice. Excellent shout out. Yeah.
So you want to put together a desk in like 5 minutes, just make the class.
Ian, way to get your homework done. Anything else? Awesome. Okay. Well, at this time, I'm going to roll through. We're going to talk a little bit about what the orientation program most traditionally looks like. So, to give you guys a better idea, orientation is traditionally a 2.5-day program. It's kind of viewed as a student's intent to enroll. So essentially, a lot of schools, when you're going through, they might have a deposit. A deposit is traditionally binding, which means that a student has to attend that school if they put down that amount of money. Orientation is viewed as a student's intent to enroll, but it is not binding, which essentially means that a student can sign up for orientation and not come to MSU, and nothing ultimately happens. But it's kind of the indicator to us that yes, the student is enrolling, they're coming to MSU, they want to register for classes. With that, there is a fee associated with it. That's one of the ways that we get students to have a little bit more skin in the game and a little bit more of a commitment to come to MSU. In the past, that fee has varied. In 2020, the fee was $175. That essentially covers program costs, so stuff like mailings and your guys' pay, your polos, your name tags, the parent brunch, any kind of program costs that might be associated with orientation, but it also most directly covers their cost of staying on campus. In a traditional orientation, students stay overnight in the residence hall, so they stay on campus for 2.5 days total, but 2 nights in the hall, and so that's what that fee covers. So we usually have 4 freshman orientations. The first 3, so 2 in June, 1 in July, the first 3 usually have around 800 students. So between you guys, you're managing 800 students, which is a lot. But then our last one, which is most commonly called our fall program, is in August, and that's around 1,200 students. The August program is a little bit different because students don't stay in the residence halls. You guys aren't responsible for managing them at night. And that's because they're moving straight into their assigned residence hall. It's during move-in week. They attend our sessions, they register for classes, and then the following week they start classes. So as much as possible, we try in the Office of Admissions to encourage students to attend one of our June and July sessions because it allows them to build that community earlier, get registered for their classes earlier, and just feel a little bit more confident when they return to campus. August is usually our largest program, one, because students don't have to make an additional trip out, right? But also because it's usually free, since they don't stay in the residence halls and since we're not paying for their meals. So there's some things we kind of see students traditionally end up attending that one for financial reasons or just if they're like from the coast and don't want to make an additional trip. But ultimately, we try to encourage them to come to one of the earlier ones if possible because it's a lot less fast-paced, it's a lot less overwhelming for students, and ultimately just make sure that students feel comfortable before they enroll. All right, with that, there are 4 parent and family programs. Those are basically all just coincide with the student sections, right? So if little Janie is coming, their mom's going to come with them. So we set up a whole bunch of different sessions and meals and brunches and socials for parents to also connect and learn about MSU. Parents are basically either staying on campus, if they opted into that, in a separate residence hall that they organize with conference services, or they're responsible for their own lodging. So that's often when a lot of people might just get their own hotel, they might get an Airbnb, maybe some friends of students came out together, so parents stay together at like an Airbnb. So those are the most traditional programs, and I would say 90% of what we talked about in this class covers those. We also then have a variety of other programs that we're responsible for hosting. The non-traditional orientation is about a one and a half day program where students come in July. We get them registered for classes, they meet with their advisors, they do a campus tour. But it's a little bit more designed for some of those students that have different questions, different circumstances, want to hear about different resources. Transfer student orientation is one day in August. That's basically for all our transfer students to come get all of the same resources. They traditionally have already registered for classes online or on their own time. So this is a little bit more of a welcome program. The veteran student orientation, we work really closely with Veteran Services. So they essentially go through all of our registration, all of our processing. But Veteran Services is the one responsible for managing their schedule. So when they come, that one day program is focused on a lot of the same stuff our program is, but it also then is all focused on documentation and making sure that veteran students have their benefits lined up, so then they can get their schooling paid for or accommodated based on some of those benefits. And then very lastly, international student orientation. Over the last few years, international students have traditionally come to our fall program. I said that OIP and admissions kind of partner on those sessions. What has kind of happened in the last few years is basically international students attend the sessions that are applicable for them, but then when they're not applicable, they end up attending something for OIP. So it's been kind of the back and forth between their sessions and our sessions. So just looking at this, this is the very basics. Is there any questions that you guys have just hearing about the design of the program or the structure at all? Cool. So to give you guys a better idea of what this actually means, we have a schedule here for you. Let me find it. Cool.
Also, I'm going to be moving around this contact sheet. Make sure all your information is correct. It's just going to go around. Put a check mark if it's all right. If it's not, fix it, and I'll edit it and edit it on Tuesday.
Yeah, for sure.
Are we expected to help with all of the different like non-orientations that are like the traditional ones?
Yeah, so we ask you guys for like signups to help essentially, but usually it's not an expectation that we need like all 30 or 40 orientation leaders to help. So we do ask for help and we ask for assistance, but that's why we don't give you guys those dates in advance, because it's a little bit more of a volunteer. All right, so with that, this is going to be a breakdown of what these students receive. So just an overview of the sessions and the information. To start out, students are going to check in. They have quite a wide gap when they come. So that's important to keep in mind because some students are showing up early. They're like out there waiting for the doors to open because they're eager beavers. But then you also have the people that are always going to be 30 minutes late and then they're rushing into your session and they need a little bit more assistance because they're trying to catch up on some stuff. So during orientation, traditionally students get their hot card. That's going to probably be really important as we start to talk about this upcoming summer because there is a little bit more restriction in the residence halls with hot cards right now because of COVID, right? So there is going to be an element of getting a hot card. If they haven't already been on a campus tour, they can go on that. The library also offers some self-guided tours for students and family members. And then there's an info table. One of the big things is that when students come in a traditional orientation, they're divided based on their area of study, right? So like you'll have electrical engineers together, you'll have nursing students together. So we do have a lot of students that come in and change their major that day. They've like decided they have a life crisis or like they already decided what they want to study all of a sudden. And so you will potentially get a list of students and then immediately one of those students moves groups. And so there is a lot of movement that first morning because as you can imagine, moving groups might mean moving rooms, moving how many students you have in a certain space. And so there is a lot of moving parts that first morning, I would say. The BESI is essentially a survey that the Office of Student Success offers. It gauges everyone's engagement levels when they're an incoming student. And then they compare this information against like camp change and other indicators if you're using their services, so they can kind of see maybe where some students aren't engaging and try to pull them in a little bit more. They do have a tour over at the Museum of the Rockies, and then they have a series of sessions that kick off for any of our students, but these are all essentially optional or unique sessions because the very first thing and one of the most important things is at 11:15 and it's the what's up. So prior to that, if students are interested in the honors college, pre-law, pre-vet, or pre-health, they can receive some specific advising and resources that morning. But with that, the what's up meeting is going to be like the first big kickoff. What's up is a presentation that you guys give. It's on your outline, it's on your syllabus. We'll go over what that looks like. But I would say that what's up is a little bit of a looser conversation because it's really all about like welcoming students in when they first land on campus. Right from what's up, you're going to walk them over to lunch. You guys do eat in the dining halls as well with your groups. So that's kind of nice because during orientation, you stay on campus with them and you eat with them. So we give you a lot of free meals. We then roll into a few rotating sessions. So academics 1 and academics 2 essentially block each other. So half the group goes to academic 1, half goes to academics 2, and then they switch. Academics 1 is another session that you guys give. So that's also on the syllabus for you guys, and we'll review that later this month. Academics 2 is when the registrar is showing them PAT course, and it's where they actually see how they register for classes. So in academics 1, they're learning about like what classes do I need, how many credits do I need, what does this all mean, and then they jump to academics 2 where they actually see how to physically register. What I wish I would have known is hosted by Matt Kyrus, or our Dean of Students, and then he also pulls in kind of a panel of representatives from across campus. So this has looked different in the past, but in 2019, it looks like he pulled in our Chief of Police, Housing, Director of Institutional Equity, Title IX. So really just getting students kind of the resources and services that they need and making sure that they understand expectations and conduct while on campus. We then bounce to dinner with the orientation group. This is a specific time where we ask leaders to eat with their group because it's still the first day. Sometimes students are still a little like awkward. They still don't know how to introduce themselves to like make friends. And so this is a little bit more about still facilitating some of that group community. From there, we do have some evening sessions. So that includes the bookstore presentation. The Bobcat game show has changed basic presentation. Essentially, it's all about health and wellness and resources on campus. And so we've tried to modify that a few times. So it may or may not look different for this upcoming. From there, we have Monday Night Lights. And that's basically where this last traditional program, they had the whole turf field open. And so people were out there like playing games, running around. It was super nice weather. It was beautiful. There was like a sunset. There was ice cream. It was like a whole thing. So this is traditionally when students get to break off and have a lot more free time. So right around 9:30, 9:15 is when students are going to be running around, hanging out with each other, meeting new people, kind of deciding what they want to be spending their time doing. During that time, though, we do have orientation info tables. So if anyone's just like really lost, really confused, needs a place to go, we will have orientation leaders manning the info table and answering some questions. During this time, though, orientation leaders are going to be responsible for a lot of activities, making sure that students aren't leaving campus, kind of facilitating some of those fun activities, I would say. And then we also have a movie. So you can see that we kind of try to set up a variety of activities for people that maybe are a little bit more shy, like maybe they just want to go watch a movie and debrief. Students that are like gung-ho and want to go like do some bocce ball or something like that. So we have a variety of different things for students to choose from. But ultimately, the whole night comes to a close when it's midnight and they have to check back in to their orientation. And then they wake up bright and early the next morning. Breakfast is served until 8. Students then rotate through a series of sessions again. The math placement test is potentially going to look a little bit different for this upcoming year, but when students come in, we do place them into math, English, and language courses. You guys are going to learn a lot about that. And so this is traditionally when students can take that if they don't have a placement. Get in the zone is basically when students go, and it was a little bit more about like learning strategies and time management, how to set yourself up for success. Students then rotate and session through both paying for school, which is a reminder of financial aid, scholarships, financial education, budgeting, all of that good stuff. And then becoming a Bobcat is from AYCSS, and so they talk a little bit more about some of the services that they have available as well. So the Allen Center. We then divide out for lunch again. You'll see we rotate through lunch at a different time. And then students go and meet with their academic department. So in a normal year, like 2019, for example, students come to orientation because one of the primary functions is to register for classes, right? So meeting with their academic department is a big part of that. So they'll be broken out based on college. And then right after that, they go and meet with their academic advisor. You can see this as a giant block of time. Some students literally take 15 minutes and they leave and they have a lot of free time. Some students are so stressed and they have so many questions and they just need a little bit more assistance. And so they might be there until literally 5 o'clock. So it really depends on the type of student. Orientation leaders do assist with this and answer questions and help with the academic department meetings. But I think that this is a huge focus for our students when they traditionally come for orientation, and that's why there's so much time dedicated to it. So once they have met with their academic advisor, they have a few options of things that they can check out in the afternoon. You can see we have a bunch of different sessions. Usually the library has root beer floats. I always walk over and get a root beer. They also then have the student information fair. That's kind of similar to like Catapalooza, right? So it's basically the ballrooms and they have a bunch of different booths. And it's like Snow Science Club is there and intramural sports, and you walk around and get free candy and frisbees, and people are handing out prizes. A lot of the prizes that are being given out at that student info fair are the ones that you guys are collecting throughout this semester. So we can talk a little bit more about that too. We also then have a bunch of sessions that students can rotate through that are a little bit more specific based on interest. So we have diversity and inclusion with our DIFs. We have both Air Force and Army ROTC that present. We have honors. This is actually required for honor students to attend this session. They also then have veteran, disability, fraternity and sorority life, and student athletes. So it is a little bit more based on some specific populations or interests for us. We have Army ROTC, as I mentioned. Then finally, academic score is basically an opportunity for students to check in, review their schedule, ask if they have questions. And then we break to dinner. That evening, we have living on campus. This is probably one of the more, I would say, like important sessions for setting expectations about what it's like to live in a residence hall, what it's like if you don't get along with your roommate, how do you meet people in your hall, what is it like eating in the dining hall. That's all reviewed in this session. Life outside the classroom is usually with the Office of Student Engagement. So they go over like clubs, organizations, engagement opportunities. And then they break again at 9. And so between 9 and midnight, students have a bunch of stuff to attend. So it's like photo booths, the bowling alley is open, they have free food. Everyone's kind of just like running around, playing bingo, kind of fun. Then students again wake up bright and early. You're gonna close out with your orientation group. You're gonna do some evaluations. And then course registration is the primary function of that last day. Students, when they check in, will receive a registration time, and then their registration time will be between, like for example, this was between 12 and 1. So students will go to the computer lab based on their registration time. Orientation leaders are basically in the lab managing all of the questions and all of the course registration for a schedule like this. Then we do have some opportunities for students if they missed out on any other sessions or if they still have remaining questions. But once students register for classes, traditionally, they hightail it out of here, they get on a plane, they sail home. So I would say the big piece or the big carrot that we traditionally have is that they come to class, they come to orientation to get their classes. So that's gonna be a big part of it. Perfect. So that gives you a really good idea of what the students receive. I know it's a bunch of information, but as you can imagine, that's what the students are going through. I think sometimes it can be really overwhelming to sit in a session, another session, go and do a bingo, go and meet with your orientation leaders. So it is super fast paced. Sometimes that's really exciting for students, but sometimes that's also really overwhelming for students. You can kind of see both sides. Is there any questions about this schedule before I jump into the highlight one? Yeah.
I feel like we will go over this,
Yeah.
but like the part where there's all the individual, like the honors or RFC and all that. What do we do if kids like, well, in the honors class, but I really wanted to like hear about like Greek life?
Yeah. Yeah, so in that specific instance, there are two of those sessions that are required, which one would be honors and the others would be the student athlete one. So if you're a student athlete or if you're in the honors college, you're required to attend those sessions. So for example, if they went to the honors college one but still wanted to know about fraternity or sorority life, we have a lot of resources that we can give students. You can walk them through specific things that you might learn about in this class. And you can also refer to your whole group too, right? So if you know like Lindsay's in a sorority, for example, you can say, hey, she missed this session, would you mind chatting with her for 5 minutes? The other thing that I always remind students though, is sometimes they feel like they come to orientation and if they don't get like one answer to a question, they feel like the world is falling apart, but then they come to school here. So they still have like the whole welcome week to move into their residence hall. They have Patapalooza, they have a lot of these times to still ask those questions and connect with people. And so I always encourage them to, like, you always still have time to catch up or refresh yourself if you miss any of this information. So, yeah. Other questions? All right, I know that's a lot. All right. So what I'm going to show you next is the highlight schedule, and I would love for Lindsay and Bree to help me because this is what the students, the orientation leaders, actually do. So basically, there is a Sunday training associated with all of our orientations. This has looked different depending on the year, but essentially you guys come and you learn from us about any of the updates, any of the things that you maybe forgot between when class ends in May and when orientation starts in June. We run you through some different updates about some classes that are available and hear about different reminders, and then ultimately we feed you. So if you are kind of feeling like, wow, this is a lot of information, don't worry because we also then train you up again before each session and you can kind of make sure that you feel comfortable before you jump into the first one.
Another thing too, you get the list of students that you have throughout the session. So you can start making their door decks for like their, at least like in previous years, you can make door decks for their doors and also start memorizing names because usually, at least when we did it, in there like 20 to 25 students, you start memorizing names and stuff. This is super handy and also the later on in the year that it goes, the shorter like the training session gets usually. So it ends up being like an hour the first time and then it's like 15 minutes the last time. So
yeah, pretty nice. It's kind of like a staff meeting before you like jump in. All right, so then on the first day, we have a bunch of stuff that happens in the morning. So with this, you guys will notice that a lot of this is going to be set up. The way we do highlight schedules is if it's anyone's name, it's going to be italicized. So these are either past orientation leaders, past staff members. So you can see up at the top, like right up at 7:30, we had a bunch of orientation leaders setting up tents outside, setting up balloons, setting up tables and chairs, putting out signs, all that good stuff. We also then have a bunch of folks that are preparing different sessions that are going to come up. You'll notice complete the following. You guys have a little bit of time in the morning there to make sure that you know where your sessions are held, because you yourself also get like a bunch of rooms, right? And you're like, gosh, I don't know where Read 108 is. This is your chance to make sure that you have all of your ducks in a row before you first present. So this is kind of a general reminder to have your outline, you know where your rooms are going, you know the campus tour route, your setup. Check-in is then from 9 to 11. We do have some students that are then going to be giving campus tours during that time. So again, I think in the past, campus tours are something that orientation leaders like know how to do, but they're maybe not the most confident at. So that is something that we're gonna really try to drive home this semester. And then at this time, between 9 and 11, students start checking in. So do you guys wanna talk a little bit about what that's like in the actual hall?
Yeah, as you see, my name was up there. I did that. So that's when the students like go, they've checked in, they've gotten their like packet of stuff that they get, and they walk to the residence hall that they're staying in. Last year, big boys stayed in north and south pitches. They're just gonna get super easy, big buildings, all that sort of stuff. So they walk in, there's this huge line, they say, here is my sheet, and we're going to room assignment, and then we're pulling keys and giving them keys. Once they get into the hall, they find their room, and that's where typically the leaders are waiting on the floor. With the name tags already put there, so you're like, what do you mean? Oh, Alex, they don't use your name tag. And then you tell them the information, that they need, so pretty much where they're gonna be, what's up with you, we should go to the next thing.
And I would say this can probably be like, out of all of orientation, maybe the one of the more awkward times, because they don't know you at all, and they're super overwhelmed. They're sometimes sad because they just left their parents, or they're overwhelmed because like, I came to college, but I came to orientation with a group of my friends from Missoula. Then they all divide you up based on area of study. So I had to say goodbye to my friends, and I was pissed. So it's a time where I think some students are feeling less confident or less comfortable. And so this first impression is going to be kind of key, because you want to make sure that they know that you're a resource and that they feel comfortable with you. This is also where they're going to be dropping off all the stuff, like all of their bags and everything's in their room. So this is also a reminder usually to tell them to take a bunch of stuff with them, because once they leave that room, they're usually not going to be back there until like 10 p.m. maybe. So kind of making sure that they have everything they need for the day. All right, so then as mentioned, we do have some of these programs in the morning for students. You'll notice that we have some folks that are monitoring these. Essentially, that just means that if students are like wandering around, if they have questions, if anyone needs help, orientation leaders are there.
Passing out papers usually.
Passing out papers, maybe like throwing out some free t-shirts. Maybe we should invest in like a t-shirt gun, but
Yes, please,
that would,
and let me use it
yeah.
in class.
And then we roll into What's Up. And so What's Up is the first presentation that you give. These are the coordinators. So you can see this is where they're gonna be hanging out if you need assistance. And then these are all of the different things that you'll be covering in that first meeting. And again, we'll provide you with this information too. But if you guys want to speak to What's Up, or what it's like.
Well, for me, since I had to monitor a session, I wasn't in my residence hall checking in students, so somebody was helping me do that. So I was here and I told another orientation leader, hey, tell my students I'm gonna be outside in the pro and tell them meet me there. So they all came and met there. Usually how that looks is you'll be meeting your students either on your residence hall floor where you're staying, or you have a designated spot that you tell them at check-in that you're gonna meet at. So for me, obviously I said, hey, meet at the pro or the procrastinator theater, because we don't use, we don't shorten things the first time we see students. But yeah, so I said, hey, meet me at the procrastinator theater. I'll be out there. I checked them in. And then I gave my What's Up, which Bree and I will give you guys an example of what a What's Up is supposed to look like. And then we went on to the next part. We had lunch together, which is the next part of that whole dealio. We went to rendezvous, eat outside, get to know everybody, and then go on to the academics one, right? Yeah.
And I'll mention at this time, like this might sound like, oh, that's so chill. They come up and then we just like,
It's chaos.
It's chaos because there are 800 students that are checking in. Their parents are there. You guys are all checking in, calling each other all the time and texting each other because the student showed up somewhere they're not supposed to. Your coordinators, yeah, your coordinators are calling you because so-and-so changed majors, so they're now in your group and you have to change their room and maybe there's a lost key somewhere in there. So this is really when I think like students hit the ground running, orientation leaders hit the ground running in their first session because they're like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, but you do. You totally do. It's just like going with the flow, being adaptable, because it is a lot in the first few hours.
I like to prepare like extensively, and I had no idea what it was supposed to look like on the first day, and then I just got thrown into it, and I was like, and it all worked out. Nobody died. No one got lost. All my students are great. I see them all the time. Like everything was fine. So don't worry about it. It'll come. It'll come.
Yeah. I'll also mention, there is a few of these, acronyms that you'll kind of be seeing. A RAR, we have been using in the past few years. We didn't use this last year, but what a RAR usually is it stands for Registration and Written Report. And it's basically when a student checks in, they receive this information, piece about themselves. So it has like their test scores on there, their math placement on there, it has their registration pin, has their registration time. It's like the most important piece of information that they receive. And so they're gonna be referring back to that in a lot of these sessions. So that's gonna be another piece that you really cover in what's up and you make sure that. At this time, as we mentioned, you then head to lunch. You're gonna be divided into groups and then you break out for some of those sessions. During this time, this is a little bit of downtime for orientation leaders usually when students are in sessions. You sometimes are helping manage questions and traffic and whatnot, but this is usually when students have a little bit more downtime, I would say, or can actually take a breath.
I also use this time to kind of sit in on the sessions and make it so my students feel more comfortable, like talking to one another, also, and like raising their hand when the presenters are like, hey, who knows this math question? And they'll be like, hey, I know. Or, you know, just being excited and just like showing them that it's okay to like be embarrassing sometimes. Obviously, you see me, I'm very embarrassing, so my students love me.
Okay. Way to be humble. At this time, you'll see that they break to dinner. You guys do eat dinner with them. Again, this can be like a little bit awkward because you're just like, what do you guys like to do? Are you having fun? Like whatever. But it's just really about making sure that you're a resource for them, and that they have someone that they can chat with. So we have the two groups go to dinner. We then break out into some of those sessions in the evenings. And then you guys are really responsible for managing a lot of these sessions and rounds. So I recently learned that rounds is not something that orientation leaders like to do, which was shocking to me because I adored rounds. It's when you like bounce out at people and you're like, you can't leave campus, and like it's amazing. But you can see that between these different activities, students are going to be helping managing like checkout equipment or answering questions, walking around, generally introducing themselves to people. If you're not in that group, you're then going to be on rounds. Rounds is basically making sure that students aren't drinking, doing drugs, doing inappropriate things, they're not leaving campus, they're following the rules of campus, and that they're staying kind of in their lane. You'll notice that we work in pairs. Sometimes it's kind of intimidating for orientation leaders to do conduct management and behavior management. We always send you out in pairs so you kind of have a buddy to manage that process. You also then always have a witness if there's something that ever happens. But ultimately, it's a lot easier than it sounds. You're just going to make sure that students aren't misbehaving and that they're having fun and staying safe. We also then, as I mentioned, have like a movie. So there's always someone that's checking in on the movie, and then there's folks that are managing. Do you guys want to talk at all about, what the evening looks like?
The evening's actually pretty fun. Rounds and people don't like them. But honestly, you literally just like walk around campus all night. You just go for like a casual evening stroll with everybody.
I always love them.
They're like, not, I mean, at the end of the day.
We had an orientation leader that always used to do his rounds on a skateboard, so he would look like just like a casual like neighborhood guy, and then he would be like, hey, you're leaving campus, and then they would like totally freak out and then come back.
Being incognito was my favorite part.
Yeah.
Not wearing my name tag, being like, hey, I'm just a regular student. And then putting it on like, don't leave. It was so fun. So there's fun stuff to do. And especially the turf fields. I got turf fields my first night. And I just played dodgeball with everybody and like threw balls into people's faces. So it's really fun. It's a fun night.
And the info tables are always, like, north and south edges from lobbies are always like, booming in the evenings. So there's like tons of people around, typically people are playing like ping pong or whatever they have. So it's super fun. You want to talk about anything?
Well, I'll just say as well, at midnight is when they're checking back in with you. So at this point, you're usually back in your residence hall, making sure that students are actually in their rooms and going to bed. So there is a little bit of just like making sure that you know where every single student is and that they're good to go before the next morning. Anything else I missed on? Okay. Cool. Then the next day, we do have, traditionally a math placement exam. So a lot of students are gonna be managing that process, answering questions, making sure that students are logging into the computer, that they get their scores and they understand their scores. And then we also have a bunch of rotating sessions that morning as well. In terms of the academic department meetings, do you guys wanna talk about what it looks like when they're actually like heading off to advising and whatnot?
Yeah, Lindsay and I work immediately in the same, we advise the same group, so we were always together for this. So pretty much the like department head will come in, so if you have like a big department, say you're in, like the letter, the letter science, so it's like pretty broad. So that's when the department head comes in, talks to you about a bunch of stuff, and then you can like split off like specific, so like for college letters, like when I was in orientation years ago. I would split off with like two other people that were like biology at the time, and like or like random, different bunch of random places. And that's when you like sit down with your advisors. Lindsay and I were one of the colleges, or we advise pre-med, so our academic department has pretty academic advisors as well. So the students didn't have to move around. So you get both, depending on which college you're advising. You either take them out to breakout rooms, or the advisor is just staying on the entire time. Get work on, hands-on with the students. And this is where honestly, like, the leaders come in like super handy, because this is where they're asking you questions about like, well, what about this class? Like, how do I know if I've got enough credits? Blah, blah, blah. So that's when you're really sitting down, like, building the schedule with your students. So it's really personal. I don't want to like, you know, give a quick.
Also, like telling, hey, this class is like really fun and also is important for the major, like you're gonna like it, getting advice on different classes. Yeah, it's really fun also, because you also get to like meet other students that aren't in your groups as well sometimes. So it's pretty cool.
Alex, do you have a question?
I was at, I started at art science picture when they go off into this is, I think, is a little different.
Yeah.
All kind of similar.
Yeah, they're all different, and usually the academic heads or like the department heads will kind of guide you as to what to do, because they also have a better idea of like what students or what major, what specific thing, all that jazz. So
Art science picture, they all go to like one room and like an entire college and talk with all the teams. And then each school breaks up, and then they each get a tour of their school and like get presentations, and then they do academic advising. So I think it's a new one, that's been called for art picture.
Honestly, you're just like there for the ride. This is like the gather's time to like,
I'll also mention this is traditionally when our students get to know faculty and staff. Like, it's really cool that you as a freshman student might be bonding with the dean of your college. And this is a really good opportunity for you to make a really good impression on faculty and staff in our area. This is also when we hear if you guys are not behaving or not being helpful. And so it's a really good opportunity for you guys to connect with folks that work on campus and are really knowledgeable. At this time, we then break and go to a bunch of these different sessions. So as a general reminder, like that honors college session I mentioned is required. We have some folks managing that. We have some folks that are managing the fraternity and sorority life sessions. The student info fair was always my favorite. Leaders are basically responsible for like going around and then also making general like announcements or dismissing prizes over the intercom. When I was the coordinator, I made my students always do like push-up contests and do the Macarena and sing the fight song. So it's kind of fun because you're like walking around and it's super high energy, I would say.
another time to just embarrass yourself, like me. Yes.
Those sessions you're talking about, are we like encouraged to like go with our students and hear a couple people going, we're supposed to go with them, or kind of stay available in like students?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it kind of depends on the timing, because you might have a responsibility doing something else at that time, like setting up for something or tearing down or whatever. But otherwise, if you do have free time, you're more than, encouraged to attend sessions, sit with your students, answer questions. Yeah.
I just realized I don't know the fight song. Are we gonna go over that?
Yeah, we can. That's a great point.
I don't know. Freshmen didn't like.
Yeah, it's usually, I think it is covered in one of the sessions.
they do it in MSU where they teach a picture of the app.
That's true, but then we can also, yeah,
It's one of those.
muscle memory for sure. We can build that in. Yeah. Cool, and then we break out, and again, we do some of these evening activities. So this is where a lot of students are like managing the photo booth, for example. Some students are managing the movie. Some students are downstairs bowling and doing video games. It's also when they have like Dance Revolution and like bingo and stuff going on. Ice cream, so serving ice cream. And then there's also, again, some hall duties and some rounds associated. And then ending the night out at midnight. So usually the way that we try to do it, if you're on round one night, you're on activities the other, and then you switch. But then for the next session, we try to switch you as much as possible. So you get to see both of what nights look like throughout the whole summer, but you are doing either rounds or activities and then. Cool. Then on Wednesday, you wake up bright and early, you're checking out your group, and you're doing some evaluations. I don't know if you guys want to chat about closing out with students or staying in contact with them.
Usually I, like, at this point, I give them like my Instagram or like Snapchat or whatever, and like phone number, they already have it, but, you know, reiterate, they got my phone number if you need anything. And I also hand out like we're supposed to hand out a survey too that they give, so you hand out a survey to students and they'll tell you what they liked about it, what they didn't like, so you adjust it for the next session. And you have to go into each room and make sure that the blinds are closed, like there's a whole thing, a whole list that we'll give you. I like to print out like a little sheet that they get the night before, or like I tape it on their door in the morning. So they can be like, okay, check, I did all this, so it's easier for me to check them out. Because we have to be at the registration lab super early in the morning, so it's just nice to get it done quickly. So that's up to you, whatever preparedness you want to be at.
Perfect. And then we roll to registration. So this is where you're going to notice we have like odd number leaders and even number leaders. That basically means half and half. You guys are divided up, and then you're helping students in the registration labs register for classes and answering their questions. We then kind of close out. You guys get lunch one last time, and then traditionally there is a like leader checkout or a staff check-in afterwards to make sure that all the orientation leaders feel good, and we close out in the end session. We're all hunky-dory.
Last day is the best day.
Registration is the nice, yeah. So,
Any questions about some of the like responsibilities or activities that you guys are kind of doing throughout the whole program?
Any of the returners or like OGs have anything else they need to add, especially the people who've seen orientation before, like in person?
Okay. Cool. All right, so that is a general overview for you guys of both a traditional session and then a little bit more about some of the student activities. I'm very quickly just going to show you the parent session as well, because I'm incorporating a new session for you guys this year. So when you look at this, this is what our parents are doing. Parents do, so basically parents come to orientation and they are immediately divided from their student. Parents and students never attend the same session. They're actually divided for a reason. This is really an opportunity for students to kind of have like ownership over their own college experience, right? And kind of break off from their parents a little bit. That can be really challenging sometimes, because sometimes you have to tell parents like, you know, you're not allowed in this room, or hey, like you need to take your student to the next session. Sometimes that's really hard for the student. Anders always talks about how there's two types of parents. There's like the helicopter parents, but then there's also Velcro parents, which basically means once you divide the student and the parent, neither of them work individually. So it's true, you're going to see all different kinds of parents, but we have set up a whole schedule of programs and sessions to basically keep parents busy and out of your hair. A lot of the parent stuff falls on our staff, and that's why I also wanted to incorporate a parent session this year, so orientation leaders have a little bit more interaction with some of our parents. So you'll notice that they have a lot of the same sessions in the morning. At 11:15 is when students go to their What's Up. So that's when we break for a lunchtime for our parents. So they're dropping off their student. They can then eat lunch. We then break into a family welcome with the director of admissions, so previously Rhonda. We have Matt Kyrus meet with them, so our dean of students. We then go over the schedule with them, and then they go into some of the sessions that the students receive. So basically by the end of parent orientation, they receive a lot of the same information that the student got, but it's always at different times and they're kind of swapped. At the very end of the day, we do have a parent and family reception for our staff and for our parents. That is super fun. Basically, we all go over to the stadium and we all hang out there. We eat some appetizers. There's deans, there's people from all different departments, and then there's the admissions rep staff. And we all basically just welcome our parents and thank them for supporting their student and choosing MSU. Then the next morning, parents also receive an academics one, so they also get to meet with staff in their students' area of study. They also learn about what their students' advising process is. We don't try to go too in-depth saying like your student needs to exactly register for this schedule, but just kind of giving them a general overview of how their students are registering or what systems they use. We then have a nice little write a letter to your student session that's hosted by our Dean of Students office or our Bobcat Parent and Family program. This is like a really fun activity because parents actually get like really emotional or really into it. Like I've seen parents out there just like crying, writing a letter to their student before, which is really nice. But ultimately it's really cool because they give it to the Dean of Students office. The student has no idea that their parent did it, and then they receive it in their first week of classes, which is cool. They also then go into paying for school. This is actually sometimes even more valuable for the parents than it is for the students, because in many circumstances, the parents are involved in financing their students' education. So parents are super into this session and have a lot of questions. We then break for a bunch of different sessions. We do host a session for parents about campus safety. We also then do some student information fair. All of this is happening. So this is sometimes where students and parents might end up in the same space because they might go to the same like student info fair or might go to the fraternity or sorority info session at the same time. But then they break out again when their student leaves. And this is typically when a parent then goes to dinner. From there in the morning, we have a brunch for them and they attend the orientation and graduation and the academic session. The parent brunch is kind of an opportunity for us to also give them a bunch of prizes, give them like, you know, the little like license plate like things that say like my student goes to MSU, and then they also fill out an evaluation. So we hear from both students and parents at the end of their experience. And then we have these sessions that are also available to the students, so when they're coming back together, they can attend these sessions together as well. I'm not sure if any of our returners or reporters want to add anything about parents or their interactions with parents over the last few years. I adore parents. Sometimes I like parents more than students. And so that's honestly why I think it's really important for you guys to have a parent session. When I was an orientation leader, there was a parent session. So what would happen is I would meet with the group of students, let's say it's the College of Nursing, for example, and then about 2 hours later, I would go and meet with their parents. And so it was really nice because there was a cool opportunity for me to say like, oh, I connected with your student, I think she's doing totally fine, or like, here are some resources. So I know that they're receiving the same information and they're also hearing it from me. Any questions about parents at all? All right, that was a super in-depth overview of 2019. What I am now going to show you guys is basically what we did for the last year. So basically in a COVID world, how this has looked wildly different. So here's my little slide deck. Cool. All right, so for summer 2020, like COVID hit like in what, March, right? So we had about 2 months before May, before some of our students started coming in. And so we very quickly reverted to an entirely online program for summer 2020. It was hosted in D2L, which I think had some pros, but also presented a lot of challenges, which was no one's fault. It was our first time just trying to like jump in and figure out how to get all of this content online. Some Some of the big things that we ran into is that because it was in D2L, that was actually a class that the registrar's office had on their schedule. So when we would pull registration reports, it would look like a student has registered for classes. They were in the orientation leader class, which is bad because we want to know when a student has and hasn't registered for classes. That was a hard problem. The way it was set up in D2L, I think, was kind of clunky. Like sometimes students couldn't exactly figure out what they had completed, what their responsibilities were, what they did and didn't have to do. I'm seeing some heads nods because there are freshmen in here who probably just went through it and they're like, yeah. So we recognize all that, so we're changing it, just so you know. And then there was just also, I think, just a lot of learning that we did by putting all this information online for the first time. It was really my goal when I came into this position to really streamline online orientation, but also find some continuity between all these different majors, because some majors had like videos that were an hour and a half long, and then like some majors had videos that were like 11 minutes long. So we needed to kind of find some unity between all of this and provide some more cohesive information. So what we did for this spring is that we hosted online orientation for all of our students, freshman, transfer, vet, and international. And every single population mentioned up there then basically had a pathway in CAS Connect, which I'm going to show you guys. CAS Connect is a platform that is managed through OSE, through the Office of Student Engagement. Has anyone used CAS Connect to like register for a club event? A few of you do. Cool, great. You guys are a little bit more familiar than I am. Basically, we built out some pathways there, and that's when students were getting in. With that online orientation, they were then doing remote advising with their academic advisor and registering for classes. We then invited our freshmen to come for an in-person program, and then some of the transfers that they had to separately register. So we had about 350 students this incoming semester, like 2 weeks ago, and then we had about like 70 or so that we were kind of managing for our in-person program. More than that, like 100. With that, there are 9 modules, and the way I divided it is that I really tried to put all of the academic stuff online. So basically, like, how do I log into D2L? How do I know what classes to register for? And how do I register for those classes with my advisor? And then the in-person stuff, we focused a little bit more on like community building, campus tour, finding your place, now that you're here, what's up. Everything that I host right now in person, I have to get approved through the SEAT committee. The SEAT committee is made up of about 40 representatives from across campus. It is everyone from like residence life to parking to campus police to all these different people. And they have to look at my proposal and make sure that it's safe and I'm following all the COVID-19 guidelines. And then they pass it to the county, and the county has to say, yes, Shannon can be responsible for this specific event. So in doing so, we have to follow a lot of guidelines that are established. So for this spring, we divided students up into groups of 25, had them rotate through a bunch of different sessions. And then we also created a new session, which is called Campus in COVID, which is one of the sessions that's also on your guys' outline. So basically setting the expectations of what classes look like in a COVID world. Some of our returners helped with those spring orientation sessions. Does anyone want to add anything from their experience? Like how it looked very different, what went well, what you found? Lila, anything? Chris, anything?
Yeah, I mean, there was like an issue on like one of your sheets, like where like, we were supposed to go from the class. Like,
yeah.
They had a different one than we had.
Well,
Like
thanks
the
for calling me out. Like, what? You could have told me.
You should have called on Chris.
I know, could have called on Chris. But sometimes you do run into those things. So that's the reality of, managing a lot of schedules too. Yeah, Lila?
I guess, so for spring months, 6 weeks ago, the biggest difference is that we didn't have groups, so we were like doing a lot of, the leaders were doing a lot of the background, like getting students to and from different programs or meetings, and then we would like also in those meetings, and it wasn't like sitting group all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Jessica?
Really relaxed compared to like what summer orientation just like felt like.
Yeah.
And I got a really fun around with all the cat kids.
Yeah, you did. So ultimately, I think that this spring was obviously a learning experience. I will show you guys what the Task Connect online platform looks like, just to give you an idea. So basically, when students come in here, for those of you that haven't seen Task Connect, this is the platform that is used for like clubs, organizations, community service. So you'll see a bunch of this other stuff that's also happening on campus. Students then would basically scroll down, they would see only one of their paths. They would click on freshman orientation. There would be 9 modules that students would work through, and you can see their overall progress. So they would click in, let's say like this one, for example. They would watch a video, and when they were done watching that video, they would mark it complete by signing their name and the date that they completed it. With that, we then also incorporated some questions into these. So for like Academics 102, for example, by marking it complete, they had to answer a series of questions to make sure that they had completed it. A lot of it was videos, but some of it was also like practicing logging into MyInfo themselves, going into D2L. They would then get down to academic advising. And the way we've done it is that they watch the advising videos based on their area of study. So like engineering, for example, they would watch all of their advising videos and then schedule an appointment. So if they were like a chemical engineer, for example, they would then click in and watch these different short videos based on the things that they were going to be taking in their classes, or the classes that they were going to be taking in their curriculum. With that, they then go online, they schedule an appointment with their advisor, they register for classes. We also then incorporated this like once you're here. It wasn't required for them to click through every single item, but we provided them with these resources so they could read through what they were most interested in. So if they were interested in honors, if they were interested in the bookstore. But a lot of this stuff is what we then focused on during in-person orientation on the 7th. So that's what Lila and Jess and Chris and everyone were just kind of mentioning. When they came in person, we did a welcome, we did a campus tour, they did this campus and COVID session. We also then did a campus resource panel. So basically it was made up of representatives from Allen Yarnell Center, DIS, Rec Sports and Fitness, OSE, and someone else, Dean of Students. They then also did a paying for school session, they did lunch, they met with their area of study, and then basically had an Are You Ready kind of like closing out wrap up. So this spring, our in-person programming was a lot shorter, it looked so modified, but I think it really set us up to have a better understanding of what the summer could look like with some things that we're kind of facing. Any questions about like what it has looked like this last summer or spring? Is everyone just like dying to know what this upcoming summer is going to look like?
You guys know?
What?
You guys even know?
No. No, we don't.
Do my best.
All right. So, some big reminders. President Cruzado has been telling us that she's been finalizing the academic calendar for about 2 weeks of my life. So, as soon as she announces the academic calendar, we have much more finalized dates. What that looks like is that it could be the academic calendar that you guys see online where school starts right around like August 29th or August 30th, or it could be moved up 2 weeks again and it would start on August 16th. There's pros and cons to both. There's some reason to believe that she's going to move it up again. So this is a very, very tentative proposed schedule based on a accelerated academic calendar. So the original summer dates were June, July, and August. Those are the ones that you guys had on your application when you applied. So what I've done is I've done online orientation for a week, and then I have the in-person Bobcat boot camp that are optional, basically on those same original dates, except for the last one, which is modified. We are hoping to basically have every single student participate in online orientation. But then for some of our students that are really eager and want to come to campus and want to learn more, they then sign up for those optional in-person programs, and that's what you guys are also going to be managing are those. So they will be smaller than our traditional orientations just because of the limitations that we have from the county. But you're still going to have a divided group of students. You're still going to be rotating through sessions and doing different activities with them. So there's going to be that piece. What we are still determining is the length of that. There has been a lot of conversations about what it looks like for students to stay in the residence halls right now, over summer, if they're not enrolled quite yet. And so I've been having a lot of those conversations every day, but we are still trying to determine exactly the overnight experience might be. For these dates, you'll notice that the very, very last one would basically be the August 9th through the 11th. That would then line up with Welcome Week. So similar to past years, how traditionally students move here, there's like Catapalooza and they start all the exciting things. We would essentially line those things up again, so that last session is still aligned with the start of school. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so if you ended up doing both, the online and the in-person, would they only have to go to the?
That's a great question. So the way that we would basically work it out is that they would all do online orientation, but then the in-person orientation would build on their experience. So if you only did online, great, you met all the requirements to enroll at MSU and you're registered for classes, but that in-person session is optional. So you would still do the online, but then the in-person would be much more focused on like making friends, doing the bowling alley, like understanding campus.
If you're sitting at the information.
So it would be probably more similar or like a hybrid of kind of what we did this spring, where like the online version would be kind of academically focused and the in-person would still build on that academic experience. Like we're still enforcing some of those ideas that they receive online, but also then still building in a lot more of like fun community building, kind of get excited about both and then pieces too. Yeah. Alex?
So if they did into online or classes, but they do the in-person based on it, and
That is still being determined, but they'd probably still register online. And then when they come, they would basically still sit down with their advisor and say like, do my classes look good? Should I register for anything else? Just trying to touch base and learn more about people. Yeah.
If the academic calendar changes, is it just that last or the fall orientation session that would change and not the summer one?
Correct.
Okay.
The other things though to keep in mind is that this online orientation, those dates, I mentioned in your guys' syllabus, you're going to be responsible for helping for 10 hours throughout the whole summer with online orientation. So these are some of the dates that we might be asking you to sign up and do some of those online or virtual responsibilities. And that could be hosting like virtual office hours. That could be like we did a lot of like virtual student panels or like virtual Q&As and stuff like that this last year. So it could be a lot of that kind of thing, but helping out with those specific online dates in addition to the in-person 2.5 days that we might do. Other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, how those are like impact on the like online. You said there's gonna be like around 10 hours of that's gonna like way back. Okay.
I just said it. It's okay. Basically, it's like helping out with virtual Q&As, potentially hosting virtual office hours, answering questions in Class Connect. Really, I think the biggest thing is that we want to make sure that our orientation leaders feel a lot more connected with the online orientation experience than they did this last year, because last year they weren't really at all. And so we want to make sure that you guys are engaged a little bit more. And it could be something as simple as like, if you guys maybe already have received your group list, right? Like maybe that means that you're then responsible for reaching out to that group in their online orientation before and introducing yourself and like posting a WebEx. We haven't exactly identified exactly how it's all going to come together, but it is one of my personal goals to make sure that you guys are a little bit more in tune with that experience, because by the time they come here, they will have completed it. So we need to make sure that you guys know what it looks like and what's encompassed. So then once they're here, it's not like foreign to you, what they've already learned. Other questions? All right. I know this is like a lot of information. It's kind of overwhelming to figure out exactly what this summer is going to look like. I really just want to emphasize that if I had more information, I would give it to you. I think that it's a constant conversation that we're having and it's ongoing. We are going to open summer orientation registration February 15th, which means that we should have a lot more information in the next month. And then I will continue to update you guys as summer planning kind of continues to come together. With this, yeah,
So I was just curious, like, if they come out with a plan and say that that's the new one, is there any way that that can change, if like, COVID guidelines or anything like that change? Is it gonna still be like up in the air, or is it gonna be a set plan?
basically everything that I have to do gets approved through the county, so if any county guidelines change, then a programming would have to. All right, general reminders, you guys have 2 assignments due tonight at midnight. I will tell you right now, I am going to read off the list of people who have completed their orientation leader entrance survey as of 4:01 Mountain Standard. If your name isn't on this list, make sure that you do it. Jen, Jamie, Trisha, Emma, Callie, Mallory, Tia, Ren, Lila, Jessica, Reese, Rachel, Ian, Caitlin, Claudia, and Julia. Round of applause, you've done your job. With that, make sure that you have completed the orientation leader contract if you haven't already. And then we do have submit a headshot of yourself on D2L. I think I've received 2 of those. You do have a little bit more time before that one. They're due on the 19th, but make sure that you submit it on D2L or email it to me. Any questions about those assignments? Yeah.
Is there more information about the headshot? Like, I've just never taken one. Like, where they're from.
Yeah, I put an example of Lindsay on on D2L and basically kind of outlined like just a general photo where we can actually see your face, you're not wearing a mask. And it has to be close enough that we can generally kind of identify you. It's more so for like our staff, we're gonna put together a guide, these are orientation leaders. We can also then hand that out to you guys so you can see who else is in class and kind of get to know each other more. We might put it on the website. So things to keep in mind, but it's not like it's gonna be totally like given up to the universe. Yeah. Other questions? All right, with this,
Do you guys have last year's photos still?
yes, somewhere in the universe.
Is there any access to those as well?
If you email me, I'll look and see if we have it on file.
Also, the note sheets that I handed out along with the schedules and stuff, that's just for you guys to take notes, and we'll kind of touch on that a little bit more when we have an actual thing to take notes on too.
Any questions before we close out? Yeah.
I had a question about, so you said that President Cruzado has been finalizing the schedule for next year for the last 2 weeks, right? When is her due date for that?
If I knew,
Okay, great. I figured you would.
we were told it was supposed to be announced this week and it's Thursday, so like each. Maybe Monday next week. She likes to send out bad news on Fridays and good news on Mondays, so maybe it's great news that the academic calendar comes out on Monday.
All right.
All right, we're ending with snack time. I'm pretty sure I got it last time. Yeah.